अब तेरा ही दिखेगा हुनर, होगी तेरी चर्चा, अब छपेगी खबर। क्या अब तेरा ही दिखेगा हुनर, होगी तेरी चर्चा, अब छपेगी खबर। Come on, yeah.
Hello there, and welcome to yet another exciting episode of Hunar Charcha. And we are speaking to yet another creative person, but this time I'm calling my guest a peerless creator because he's been unlimited. He's created his own works of visual arts, being paintings, sketches, sculpture. He's created his own music festival with a very popular legacy of more than a past decade, which is called Jahane Khusro. Films, he's given us gems such as Gaman and Umrao Jan, the hangover of that still continues. In fashion, he's created his own label and also promoting arts and crafts and handcrafts and textiles of Awadh. And he's called it the House of Kotwara. And he's just also written his autobiography, and he's named it Zikr. It's of course tracing back his own personal journey and all the inspirations that he's had. And he's currently working on this massive retrospective art show of his art practice of the past 40 years or so. Yes, you guessed it right, you already know. I'm talking about Muzaffar Ali.
I drove my Jeep to explore landscapes and locations that became part of my films. Hence began the journey from the drawn line to the cinematic image, and the romance of the dashboard and controls became a collage of a moment of frozen nostalgia.
Thank you so much for being with us, for all our viewers here on Hunar Charcha. And I can assure all our viewers that this is going to be an incredible treat to be hearing from you on your creative journey.
Ji, shukriya.
So first, Muzaffar Saab, of course, you're right now in a very autobiographical frame of mind. Quite literally, you've just written your personal journey in your autobiography, which you've named Zikr beautifully. उसके बारे में हम थोड़ी सी देर में बात करेंगे, but I would like to right now touch upon what you're currently involved in your retrospective art show. You're putting together at least 40 years of your visual arts practice.
This journey really is connecting different places, different mediums. Like you'll find a lot of interconnection between film and the canvas.
Mm-hmm.
But this relationship of the film and the canvas has been there in my life right from the time I started getting into films. Because I was always a compulsive sketcher, painter, you know. And from there to move to celluloid was a very interesting and a subtle and almost imperceptible transition. And that is what I think somehow this connection will come across. And what I've been thinking, you see, because film is a visual art and so is painting, you know.
Yes.
And there is obviously a deep soul connect between the two, you know? Because you're painting what you're feeling, you know, you're painting what your heart is saying, and then at the same time your moving images are also behaving in the same way, you know.
Right.
So
right.
that way there is a interesting kind of a
Connect
which has come out over the years, and then also being deeply moved by craft. I've got a very tactile sense of expression which comes out in my collages, in my objects that I design, in and in various forms of craft, even let's say even clothing, So there is a deep connect between all these elements, and also it has the fragrance of the culture from where I come from,
Yes.
the fragrance of and the romance of you know of Awadh in a way, and also from Awadh what emanates is the tehzeeb, which is respecting other cultures.
Absolutely. Can we talk a bit about what we can see in the background, which is very majestic work of a beautiful horse with the Kufi script frame as well that you've designed. Can we talk about this series or what we can see right now just behind you?
This is a series of 4 paintings
Yes.
I created to depict Karbala from the eyes of the horse. For me, the horse is a symbol of chivalry, valor, and above all, loyalty. So the way I have used the horse in my paintings, it's really a celebration of aesthetics of a different kind.
Right.
So these 4 paintings have a different kind of a emotion. They have a different kind of a ring to it. So this is actually the first of the series, preparing for the days has just dawned, and he's getting
Okay.
ready for battle. And food is being offered to him in a kind of a urn. And there's a sher which I've written, Abo ghiza se pher ke muh keh raha tha asp. Asp means the horse. ऐ करबला मैं शह की तरह इंतहा में हूँ. मतलब he's redressing Karbala ke that I too, like my rider, is in is on test today.
Right.
So this is the opening series.
Yes.
And then it goes on to 3 more paintings, 3 more paintings, in a different kind of a state of
State
being.
of
Most of
mind.
my paintings
Yeah.
are on Rumi. I've done a lot of paintings on Rumi, and also the making of a film on Rumi. The whole script and the script
Yes.
coming alive through sketches, and then the sketches going and becoming larger than life paintings. So these will be there, and I'm calling these series Awaaz-e-Ishq.
Talking about your autobiography, which also just recently released, and of course, it is about a personal journey in which you've literally explained where are your influences coming from. But it's also about using various disciplines of arts to express yourself, to express what is your state of mind at that time, or what is your current fascination or preoccupation. I mean, in music, we've seen the festival that you continue with, the Sufi Music Festival, Jahan Khusro. Filmmaking, we of course are all very aware of. In fashion, there is a House of Kotwara, and but I'm curious to know from you, how do you decide which discipline of art will express your state of mind best at that given point of time?
See, whatever happens, poetry is, I'm driven by poetry, and I'm not a poet. So that makes it very clear. So that when I'm driven by poetry, I'm driven by ideas and thoughts which are poetic and human and aesthetic, what I mean? And they somehow have to correlate with my state of mind. And that is what has happened in all my films also, like Daman, Umrao Jan. They are just a trajectory of an emotion poetically expressed and artistically presented.
Right.
So basically, poetry is the starting point for me. And out of poetry emerges the voice. Also emerges the sacred dance. I think dance for me is also, I'm not a dancer, but I can imagine dance. I think people who dance who can dance are wonderful and gifted, you know.
Ji.
So, and that again becomes kind of a cinematic statement. You know, it can be expressed in many ways on, you know, on celluloid through light and shade. You know, so poetry is the beginning, and then out of poetry is really what I'm living, what I'm feeling at that moment, and
Mm-hmm.
it's also very important for me to feel at, you know, one with myself, one with the world, and any kind of factors that divide human beings are very
Mm-hmm.
disturbing to me. I mean, that is what my book has also brought across, is
Right.
that dividing human beings into religious groups, into ethnic groups is a very unnerving thing for aesthetics. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So that's what thing also drives my art. You know, in many ways, and my art goes also from what I want to do, what I can do, and what is possible to do. A lot of things
Right.
are not possible to do because things are changing beyond measure. But at the same time, today the impossible has also become possible.
Hmm.
So I don't uh, write off anything. I think anything can happen
Okay.
if your imagination is fertile.
Um, okay, so I'm going to take off from what you just mentioned with respect to the current scenario, which you say is very disturbing. And looking at yourself as a cultural revivalist, and from where you are, from the land of Awadh, and all your arts and creative pursuits are connected from being of the very soil. Um, how much do you think that task of being a cultural revivalist of a certain aesthetics coming in from a certain area is a tougher task for you today than it probably was 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
See, this is a full-time job, you know.
Hmm.
There's no, you can do this and that, you know. I'm not doing anything else. I'm just thinking of this in a very deep and kind of contemplative, aesthetic way, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So things are not difficult, but things are there, you know. They are not insurmountable, but they are difficult, you know, in that sense. So I haven't given up on. I mean, I'm basically a optimist, you know, and I may be a fighter, but I'm a gentle fighter. I fight with a lot of emotion, and
Hmm.
that is what appeals to me in the whole in the ethos of Karbala. You know, it's you're creating a situation where you're going to soften the hardest of the hearts. You know,
Right, right.
so you to soften hearts ultimately, and what bigger thing than Karbala to soften the hardest of the hearts? You know what I mean?
Your hope and optimism is very sweet. Actually, it's very touching. Uh, no, honestly, because the reality check is so harsh. Because we are bombarded with an alt narrative which is surrounding us 24/7. And how much do you think your efforts will have that outreach in the face of this bombardment?
Shall I tell you?
Yes.
I don't know.
Do you think it will take a stronger force this time?
This will happen all the time. ये जमाना
Hmm.
है, ये हमेशा
Hmm.
इसी चीज से गुजरता रहा है, गुजरता रहेगा. आज ये था और कल और इससे बुरा था, परसों और इससे बुरा था. तो
Hmm.
जो है वो है. इंसान जो है उसको ही अपने कल्ब के अंदर झांक के देखना पड़ेगा कि क्या उसको खुशी काहे में मिल रही है, उस किस चीज से उसको बरकत मिल रही है. Actually, it's
Hmm.
very important that people realize what prosperity means. You know what I mean? It's not easy to for economies to prosper when people don't understand the concept of of depending on the other person. You know what I mean?
Right.
People have realized that it's so important that multiculturalism is the
Exactly.
only factor that can create economies, make them strong. You know what I mean?
If the consumption today of preferences of what popular art, popular cinema, and culture is different from what you are trying to revive.
You see, I'll tell you, when you come to consumption of popular culture, there are two things. One is what is being shoved onto people in the name of this is what people want.
Mm-hmm.
And the second is what people are retaining and nursing within themselves. You know what I mean? People are a lot of music you create, but you
Hmm.
find that the heart, it goes into the heart rejects it. You know what I mean? After a while. And the music that is created out of deep thought and intensity always resides in the heart. So the heart is a place where a lot of deep, intense things reside, you know, and that is the market.
Let's talk about what is your innermost and closest to your heart, which is so evident in all your creative pursuits, which is of course the land of Awadh, Lucknow, and in and around, and being of the soil. Um, we have seen so much of it down these decades in all your creative forms. Uh, what of it, in all its multi layers, you think is left to tap uh, by Muzaffar Ali?
I think everything is left untapped, you know. We've just scratched the surface. So
But
there
one
is
would
so
think you
much to
have, but one would think you have already gone so deep in music that belongs to the
no,
place,
no,
in
because
crafts
people
that belongs to that area.
we have to grow, we have to grow with growth. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
What I did 30 years back is what I did 30 years back. What I can do now is for the next 30 years. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I feel I've hardly scratched the surface. I can do so much more with just children, you know. I think children are dying to be touched and felt and created into creatures of great creativity. You know what I mean? Which we're
Yeah.
not doing. We're just leaving our children raw. You know, we are leaving them to what is coming to them on the net, on the Google, on this and that. You know, and we are not designing their sensibilities, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that is very important because children can do wonders. You know, they can create so much art by just uh, being being observed. You know, if you observe children
Mm-hmm.
and you just do little bit of monitoring, they can do wonders. You know, so that is one thing. And then today, the as I said, I'm a gentle fighter. So we need young people who are gentle fighters who are ready to see where uh, humanism is at risk and is being challenged, where nature is being threatened, where environment is
Right.
in a state of imbalance. You know, so these are the schools that we need to create. There's so many institutions that need to come up without any walls,
Mm-hmm.
without any boundaries, without any words.
Mm-hmm.
And we
Without any
need to do
boxes
that.
and silos. Yeah.
Like when I talk of Zikr, it's got,
Jay.
I've touched upon characters who need to be explored more
Okay.
because they contain a lot of depth and emotion. We need to observe people, you know what I mean? And we need to see and measure them in just one way. Are they relevant to human beings? Are they bringing humans together? If they're not, then they're not worth talking about.
Your autobiography, Zikr, which is reflecting on your journey, in your retrospective art show, which once again is reflecting on your journey. In both these aspects, you are still leaving behind something for the younger generation and the future generation.
Of course, I mean
Hmm.
it's a way of seeing and observing the world, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and just even I think people should look at people differently, you know. I mean, I'm
Oh.
not being preachy, but what
Hmm.
I'm saying is that people are hugely sensitive, creative, um, source of energy, and unless you feel those people in that way, you are useless. It's how you behave with an ordinary person
Mm-hmm.
without asking him his name, without asking him where he comes from. So that is the power of art that you need to inculcate in yourself.
Right now, we're talking about journeys, about reflecting, but what could we see as your next creation in any which discipline of art that you have chosen?
See, when you talk that, then I think my book Zikr becomes very important because उसमें बहुत सी चीजें हैं ख्वाब जो पूरे नहीं हो पाए.
Mm-hmm.
तो उन ख्वाबों का क्या जिक्र करना जो पूरे नहीं हुए या ना हो पाए, और जिन
Uh-huh.
ख्वाबों को हमने पूरा किया वो तो सब वो भी चीजें उसमें हैं. तो ख्वाब तो देखते रहना चाहिए चाहे पूरे हों या ना हो.
जी.
लेकिन now I think I'd like to do a book on Wajid Ali Shah.
Wow.
It's an important, he's an important character, and he's really mm, the, he's a cool cat which every young man would like to
Yeah,
be, you know what I
absolutely.
mean?
I know. In fact, I remember
Maybe
reading an interview where you said that you were not very happy with the way he was
he
projected
should
in
be
in
alone.
either Munshi Premchand's novel or Shatranj Ke Khiladi. It has done great
Hey, don't,
disservice to what he was.
I don't know to say that, but just leave him alone. Let me touch him first, because he's a guy who, ek taraf to he's a lover of Krishna, and the other he's a lover of Ali. He would in his time, a Hindu would say "Ya Ali" and a Muslim would admire Krishna. He's a
Right.
a person who who brings people together.
Yes, I was in Lucknow a few months ago, and I was doing research on the Bhatkande Music School, and just being there and understanding why it was created and what Pari Mahal was. That in itself is such an insight to Wajid Ali Shah's mind.
I think this Pari Khana was a phenomena. It was like a institution of a kind
Absolutely,
without walls, and
exactly.
it was something else. But anyway, I think he needs to be uh, he needs to be put into a very interesting human context.
Yes. No, that's as you say, a very cool perspective on a very cool person in history. That should be very, very, very interesting. Um,
So these are the people I'd like to bring to the world, and not somebody people shouldn't say, "अरे ये तो बहुत outdated लोग हैं." नहीं है यार, ये इन लोगों ने बहुत झेला है.
जी.
इन्होंने They have seen the game plan of the East India Company. They've seen so many people creating all kinds of plots and traps,
Hmm.
the likes of which you can't even imagine today.
Right. I remember speaking to great international artist and sculptor Anish Kapoor, and when I spoke to him about his unfulfilled works or incomplete works or unfulfilled dreams, so he said that it's equally romantic to talk about those unfulfilled uh, projects and works because that's also something that gives a kick to a creative person. What do you have to say on that?
I think that he said a very mm, good thing, because at least art in the West has reached a point when the artist can feel secure about talking something which he
Hmm.
couldn't achieve. You know what I mean? In
Mm-hmm.
India,
Mm-hmm.
people are so insecure that they're not unsure of even what they've done.
Acha.
You haven't understood what I said.
No, they're insecure about things even that they've completed. So leave alone even
That
talking
they've
about
done, yeah.
incomplete.
Yeah,
Right.
talking
Mm-hmm.
about them.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is that we need to create a very appreciative ecosystem for art and aesthetics in our country, for people to be proud of what they haven't been able to do.
Beautiful.
अब मैंने जानिसार बनाई, मैं मतलब मुझे बाजे वक्त फिल्म नहीं रिलीज हुई है, जो भी हुआ, why should I feel apologetic about it? I think I've done a great job.
Yes.
So, but people like to measure you here only with success, which is a very sad thing. In the West, people, the art ethos is much more uh, measured by the spirit with which you approach something, and that is what our poetry gives us. Our poetry gives us a lot of ये बाजी इश्क की बाजी है, जो चाहो लगाओ, डर कैसा, अगर जीत गए तो क्या कहना, हारे भी तो बाजी मारनी।
Beautiful.
जिस दर से कोई मख्तल में गया वो शान सलामत रहती है, ये जान तो आनी जानी है, इस जान की तो कोई बात नहीं. So our poetry gives us that great sense of optimism of in things that you couldn't achieve also.
Right.
But
And
somehow we need to create an ecosystem, a culture where the Indian business head has to see things differently.
And on that beautiful, insightful note, I'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for being with us, with our viewers on Hunar Charcha. I started out by saying that I'm going to be speaking to a fearless creator, but I've had the pleasure of speaking to a very charming philosopher as well. So thank you so much.
Okay. Chaliए,
Chaliए, adab. Thank you very much.
adab.